Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon again, folks. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, but before we do the usual disclaimers, if you're unfamiliar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the campaign against the troubled teen industry, you're going to find all the pertinent links right there in the description box. Please, in particular, take note of the article written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics. In it, they interviewed over 800 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so-called behavior modification program. Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read that article so much. They threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. NeuroClastic refused. You know the drill, folks. Please read that article. Share on all your social media. Also included is NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding just in case the JRC ever actually does see through with their threat. Alright, folks, trigger warning 1 when we discuss places like the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center or Agape Boarding School for Boys. And hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with mental health issues and disabled people being tortured and abused. If you do got young children present, make sure to use the headphones. Trigger warning 2, this channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We use profanity on occasion and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously parental supervision is advised, alright? Alright, folks, I went on a bit of a news of the day rant on the last video, and I don't apologize for it. I've been a people watcher and a people observer to the umpteenth detail for as far back as I can remember, folks. I am watching the neurotypical world rip itself into shreds. There's not even a semblance of order anymore. Common sense, logic, reason, facts are slowly going the way of the dodo, which is incredibly alarming to an autistic like me who literally relies on order. Okay? When I tell you this is what happens when you let the most extremist wings of the two-party system we've subjected ourselves to take over the government and hijack it to pursue their own agendas instead of doing anything by reason or logic. This is how we get here? Yeah, that. And unfortunately, it's a neurotypical world, so we just get to sit here and go on for the ride. It's not fun. It's not fun watching you all destroy one another and then scream at us centrists who believe in an order, logic, and reason. We don't pick a side because there is no side. Just two different sides of the same coin. Okay? We're tired of the cult of personality. We want rationality, logic, and reason back in politics. Add this over emotional knee jerk reaction to everything the hell out of our politics. An overreactionary type of crap from the public that has gasoline thrown on it by social media. Yeah, we'd like an end to that too. But let me get into this, shall we? You all don't come here for my political opinions. All right, where we left off just a few minutes ago. As explained in the proposed rule, the FDA has reason to question the information provided to family members by the JRC. Thank you. By the JRC's own mouths, no less. Would they tell you that we do not use the DSM-5? When they tell you we do not do the state and federal accepted version of the full functional behavioral assessment, nor do we engage in subsequent reassessments when called for, nor do we adjust the treatment program as one thing becomes less of an issue and something else out of left field becomes an issue or becomes more of an issue. There's no adjustments made. There's no room for progress. There's no room for change. And your treatment program has got to be flexible. It has to adjust and evolve as we adjust and evolve and age. You don't need to be on the exact same treatment program that you were on at 5 when you're pushing 40. A lot of those issues I had, circa 5 years old, circa childhood, I don't struggle with anymore. But there are other things that were valent from childhood to now, new issues that I didn't have as a child. You see where we're going here, right? If you do not do the proper full functional behavioral assessment as accepted by literally the rest of your medical peers who work in this field, we have reason to question the resources you give families and the smoke that you blow up their ass. Okay? We explained how some of the parents' reported experiences contradicted assertions that the devices were only used as a last resort, and indicated that other treatment strategies were not adequately attempted, in which case it is not known whether they would have been successful. You can't try positive behavioral reinforcement for a week and see no progress and say, well, obviously it didn't work. A decent treatment program worth its salt doesn't work overnight. It takes time. When I first went into person-centered planning, began that circle of support many moons ago now. Do you think that what we set in place began to work right away? It didn't work in 2 weeks. It didn't work in 3 weeks. It didn't work for a year and a half, to be exact. But small little improvements were made along the way. And then, as you continue to work with the program, adjust, talk with your treatment team, talk and interact with your circle of support, as you adjust and change and do a reasonable accommodation here, do a coping mechanism like breathing exercises or a fidget toy there. And wouldn't you know it, it began to slowly work. Not all at once. It wasn't a year and a half and all of a sudden none of my autistic behaviors showed up, because that's not reality. It means that over time, with real work and people behind me who knew what the hell they were doing, and a circle of support that was there to support me in any way that they could and can every step of the way, slowly over time, those changes began to be made so I could get to that base level of being able to function and interact and be a contributing member of society. Okay? That's not going to happen in a week. Okay? That is not near enough time to give someone to determine if a treatment program is going to work or not. We got to get out of this quick fix mentality that has been shoved down our throats over the last couple of decades. Because that's not how real medicine works, especially not in mental health. Okay? Let's continue, shall we? In the proposed rule, we referred to parents' reports that for some of their children, schools did not attempt all treatment options. I'm going to stand up for the schools here a little bit. Your school's responsibility, if they start noticing these neurodivergent signs, is to refer you to go to a clinic and have your kid diagnosed if indeed they need to be diagnosed. That's where their responsibility begins. That's where it should end. Okay? It's not your school's job, nor is it within their capabilities to design a treatment program for your kid. That's not what they do there. It is their job as a part of the circle of support, which is prevalent throughout positive behavioral reinforcement and other positive behavioral support treatment programs, to help in any way that they can with the education and implement some of the plan when need be. But when it comes to the diagnosis itself, the full functional behavioral assessment that needs to be done, and then the navigation through the service system to get your kid proper services, this is not the school's responsibility. Their responsibility is educating your kid, point blank, period. Period, period, period. You cannot expect your school to create a treatment program for your kid and then scream it's not working. Of course, it isn't working. These people went to college to become teachers and educators. They did not go to school to become psychologists, psychiatrists, and behavioral therapists. Okay? I'm usually extremely critical of schools, particularly in regards to restraint and seclusion, but we've got to be able to know here where the school responsibilities end and begin. Your child's treatment program is on you, the parent, not the school. I'm sorry, FDA, but we're going to have to agree to disagree here. It is the parent's responsibility. The school's responsibility, and this is where the schools, a lot of times, apparently in the East Coast, fail abysmally, is to note these signs and talk with the parents so that they can take the steps like my aunt did with me. I got a proper diagnosis and then took the full functional behavioral assessment. And then navigating through the service system, person-centered planning, and creating that circle of support, beginning to start talking about treatment programs. All right? That's not the school's responsibility. School's responsibility is to tell you when they notice things and refer you to possibly, if necessary, get a diagnosis. To implement parts of the treatment program that has only specifically to do with educating your child. Nothing more. The school can't be your kid's parents. You got to be their parent. Okay? The school's job is But they should be providing better resources. Where are they going to find the time? The special education department has their funds rated every single year. They are running on a skeleton budget already. They are dealing not with just neurodivergent kids, but kids of varying disabilities. They are stretched thin as it is. Okay, let's think rationally here. So, FDA, I disagree. We cannot lay fault at the school's feet. We need to do better ourselves who work in this field to start putting better resources into the hands of those who live out in rural communities or poor communities, and especially in communities of people of color. And we need to start focusing on getting offices and clinics placed in these communities where they can actually access them to put the right information in their hands. Okay? This is where we got to come in here. We can't just point the fingers at the school and wash our hands of it. But let me continue. Ran over for a second. For example, some schools did not use a functional behavioral assessment to develop a prevention or antecedent strategies that are hallmarks of the state of the art interventions. Again, let me say it for the idiots in the back. It is not your school's responsibility to conduct a full functional behavioral assessment. Let me say it again. It is not the school's responsibility to conduct the full behavioral functional assessment. Sorry. You see what I'm saying here. Because they went to school to become educators, not psychiatrists, not psychologists, and not behavioral therapists. Okay? You are trying to place a responsibility on this school that they are not anywhere near qualified to do. The school's job is to educate your kid. Again, I will say it's your job as the parent to make sure your kid is properly diagnosed and then given a proper behavioral functional assessment. That is your job. It's your job, not the school's. Okay? That's one of the major problems and misconceptions. The line has become extremely blurred, especially in the last few decades, of what is the school's, the parents, and the medical model's responsibilities in regards to kids like myself. This is where all this confusion is, with everybody pointing fingers at each other, and we get nothing done. All right? My school was part of my circle of support until I graduated. That part of the circle of support that they assisted with was getting my ass educated and graduated. Once that was done, they were no longer a part of my circle of support because I had completed that milestone and I did not need that support anymore. Okay? Quit forcing responsibilities on schools that they're not even beginning to be near qualified to do. It's not the school's job to implement these things, it's the parents' job. The school is to recognize the signs and point parents, for the love of God, in the right direction. Okay? They're not doctors, they're not therapists, They are not mental health professionals. Please, for the love of God, start understanding this. Okay. Reference 92 also stated that once the family members were at JRC, none of the parents reported the development of prevention or antecedent strategies. In other words, these kids were not reporting that even base ABA techniques were being used. You all know how I feel about ABA. But these parents couldn't even report that that was being utilized. Only that the GED was. So if that's the case, how do you know if it's going to work or not? You don't. Let's continue, shall we? None of the comments on the proposed rule cause us to view these reports differently. Taken together, these parents' reports indicate that a non-ESD interventions based on functional behavioral assessments that seek to prevent target behaviors were not adequately attempted for these individuals, not even remotely close. Okay? We cannot take, but they're better now, and this is the only thing that works when the proper steps were never taken in the first place. How do you know nothing else will work? But they were thrown out of 3 schools and programs already. Obviously, it's the behaviors that's the problem, right? No, hun, you're flying blind. You can't just throw one of us into a random treatment program and expect it to work when you've got no basis or reason to believe that it would. You don't even know what these programs address, let alone what the bastardized version that they force the schools to do, what those entail, and what that's supposed to help. Okay? As we acknowledged in the proposed rule, we understand that these reports are only from certain parents who volunteered to share negative experiences, and we cannot conclude that these reported experiences were shared by others or are generally representative of the family's experiences at JRC. I can. I'll be that person. I can tell you when I smell a rat. And I smell a rat. Something wrong in the state of Denmark? Give me some time. I'll come up with a Tolkien reference here in a minute. Right? Enough parents have come forward speaking about their experiences to paint a pretty clear picture. I cannot say on a scientific basis, which is what the FDA is saying here, that this was necessarily the experience of every parent. But there's pretty good circumstantial evidence that seems to back it up. In particular, the fact that all these parents who've never spoken to each other before and their stories consistently match. Sets a pattern, doesn't it? And for those like, well, we looked at cases where a bunch of men or a bunch of women colluded to make their stories all sound the same. Fair enough. But these are not the type of people we're talking about. We're talking about exhausted, overworked, and overwhelmed parents who are now not just dealing with their kid with the issues that they had previously, but we are also ending up apparently dealing with the PTSD and the rage that comes from being treated like that for so long. You really think they got all the time to collude just to pick on the JRC? Didn't think so. I'm going to close on that. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do tend to get removed from time to time. You know the drill, folks. Please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit those comments. I do appreciate your time. As always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. I'll see you again in a few minutes. Bye-bye, everyone.